And we're back, and it's COMP1073, client-side scripting in the winter 2016 semester, week 4, lesson 4, part 2. Last video we did was all around assignment number 1, right? That's what we were talking about. So you have all the details there, so please look at video 1 if you're looking for assignment number 1. Okay, or part 1. Now we're going to be talking about more stuff around JavaScript, and I'm going to ask you to start a new project today, right? Because I want you to practice doing this over and over again. I know we can always go to a project we've already done, right, to show that, but some people have had trouble kind of creating a new project and doing that kind of stuff over and over again. I'm not going to talk about the problems today. Remember we talked about we're not going to do that. But I will start off a new project, and it'll be new folder somewhere on your machine. Here on the Mac, I'm just going to do it on my desktop. You can certainly be invited to do the same thing on a Windows machine. Yes, Tom, I love it. Things never go the way I want them. And COMP1073, we're going to call it lesson 4, right? We're just going to call it lesson 4. Cool. So I want to create a couple things now on the folder side, on the operating system side, to do a little different this time than we've done it before, right? So on the operating system side, we've got our folder, and I want to make a couple more folders here on the operating system to show you how this works. So I'm going to right-click here and make a new folder. We're going to call that content, where we're going to store all of our CSS. And we're going to make another folder here in the operating system inside of our COMP1073 lesson 4 folder. We're going to call scripts. There we go, content scripts. Cool. All right, now let's kick off Visual Studio Code. Now again, you can use Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio. You can use your editor of choice, whatever you like on this one. I use Visual Studio Code because it has great code hinting for JavaScript. Okay, I'm going to pull this COMP1073 lesson 4 right into my Visual Studio Code on the right side pane. And I've got my content and my scripts, right? I want to add a couple of dummy files to my folder right now, or to my folder structure. Hey, guess what I'm doing? I'm building what you need, the bare minimum so far for your assignment number 1, right? So I've got those 2 folders. That's right there. If you just put these 2 folders in place and put some files in there, I think that's like 4 marks. Right? I'm serious. That's how easy it is. But I'm telling you, every single time I do this, somebody somewhere is going to give you some other folder structure for whatever reason, right? Okay, so I'm going to right-click on my content here. I'm going to add a new file on my content called app.css, right? Because I'm going to use app.css. You can use main.css. You can use custom.css. You can use styles.css, whatever you like to use, and it's part of your best practices or conventions, right? And I'm just going to put a little comment at the top that says, you know, custom style sheet for now. It's not going to be anything right now. It's just a custom style sheet with nothing inside of it. Cool. I'm going to go to my scripts folder here. I'm going to right-click on my scripts folder. So click away and right-click on my script folder, put a new file in there, and we're going to call that app.js, just to keep with the whole app.theme. And in here, in my app.js, to prepare, I'm going to create, for the first time, and we've talked about this before, right, a anonymous self-executing function, right? And we kind of did this, and I kind of said, I'm going to blow your brains out with this one. It was one of the first classes we got together. But actually, in our week 4 PowerPoint presentation, if you actually look up online, it talks about this self-executing anonymous function that creates a closure around your variables, right? And it looks like this. So if I was going to ask you what this is, and for people who have seen it before, please bear with me, Ari, right? But how do I create it? Well, I got to start off with an open bracket. So start off with an open bracket. I'm kind of doing this backwards. I'm kind of making the app.js file first and then making my HTML file after, just to show you different ways of doing it, okay? I'm going to use the function keyword. And we're going to talk about functions today. Today is a function day, right? Which is for people who've never done functions before, you're going to learn functions are like the key object or structure within JavaScript. If you know functions in JavaScript, you're golden. I mean, the way to get the path to advanced JavaScript and to be a JavaScript ninja is to learn all about functions, right? Okay, so function. Again, another set of open braces, right? Looks pretty simple so far, right? And then some curly braces. Oh yeah. And then way at the end, 2 more two more parentheses and a semicolon. So that's kind of like, you look at that and you're like, wow, what is that, right? Yeah. Okay, so there's a couple of names for this one, and actually for people who've taken my the COMP1073 course, or if you're doing client-side scripting with Rich, if you ever do that, We're going to go over this structure again, but there's two names for it. One of them is called an IFI, right, which stands for an immediately invoked function expression. That's one of the names for it, right? Hint, hint, it'll be on your test next week, right? And I'll show you what it looks like, right? The other name for this structure here is called an anonymous self-executing function, right? We'll talk about why this is the way it is. So this actual structure, anything I put between this area here is considered the scope for this particular application, right? This function that's running right here. I still want to use strict. That's definitely what I want to use in here. So now you can put it at the top of your code like this, which means that in the global scope, everything uses strict. And I would recommend that. Remember we talked about this. Using strict is a good practice for us when we use pure JavaScript, right? Use strict.
You do a use strict and you still are assigning a number to, I mean, it's not useful.
I know you don't think it's useful, but trust me, somewhere down the line you'll see how it works, right? Use strict, right? So here's my function. So this structure, if you actually decompose it a little bit, if you notice in here, I've got this function keyword, which is how we make anonymous functions, with parentheses. Here's my parentheses, and my curly braces. Anything inside the curly braces is considered the code block, and that code block is what's being called by this function. The extra braces at the end, these braces at the end, is actually the way we call this particular function, and we've surrounded everything with additional parentheses. So this is funny syntax you've never seen before, but you will see again. So there's two names for this: anonymous self-executing function or closure, right? And the other one is an IFI, which is the more popular way these days. And IFI spelled, I'll spell it here for you. At the top, I'll make a little notation in a comment. Kind of set up your IFI. That's what it sounds like, which is, it stands for immediately invoked, if I can spell it, function expression. Okay, that's what it really is. Okay, immediately invoked function expression, which is your IFI. Okay. So we do that because remember how we're going to attach this JavaScript file to my HTML file. As soon as the HTML file sees this function, anything that's inside this area here is going to be in an enclosed scope. It's not going to be the global scope anymore, right? It's going to be in an enclosed scope, and it's going to be automatically executed. All lines within this thing. I don't have to call an init function or something else to make it go. Okay? So this is the one thing that we cover in our recent PowerPoint. If you actually look up online and you see this structure, this is what it means, an anonymous function. Let's leave it like this. So this is our structure I want you to start with. When you start your JavaScript applications, this is the basic structure every time you start. Okay? Cool. So I've got this structure. Let's leave it. We'll fill in the blanks in here. We'll put some code in here later on to connect to the HTML document. Okay? But for now, let's leave this structure. If you don't understand this structure, don't worry. Right? If it's syntax that you look at and go, that's totally unintuitive, I'll never use that. Right? Trust me, if you become a JavaScript developer anyway, you'll see this structure all over the place, especially if you're a Node developer or something like if you start getting into AngularJS and later on, or even React.js or any of the JavaScript frameworks. As you continue on the development pathway, you'll see this structure all the time, and it's good to learn it early because it's not going to shock you when you see it later. Okay. Next piece. So I've got my app.css, my app.js, and I want to make my index.html, so I'm going to kind of add a new file. We're going to call this our index.html. Now again, I've been kind of going to get Bootstrap as an example to get that little code snippet. Let's just write it by hand this time right now, right? So if I start coding, doc type is HTML. That's pretty standard for you, right? Remember, I also did something last day. I talked about how there are some shortcuts you can use, right? When we write HTML with Visual Studio Code, and we use a system called Emmet. We can use a system called Emmet to help us with the shortcuts. Let's take a look at that. So if I look up Emmet, right, and you can go to emmet.io for you to find that, you'll see that Emmet is a series of shortcuts to help us write things like a little dynamic snippets of code that we can write in as we go. If I click on documentation here, right, there's actually some really cool videos and everything else you can look at. But let's take a look at things like my expand abbreviation. So if I look at my expand abbreviation, and I'm hoping that there's more information here on my documentation, or else I'll have to just show you myself. Yeah, let's do the toggle comment or select item. Yeah, it's all demos in the video, which is kind of cool. That's new for Emmet. Before they had just like examples that are in here. Let's go back to the main website and I'll just show you how to do it. When you download Emmet, if you download it for your particular editor, notice that it's supported by different editors. Eclipse, if you're an Eclipse person, Atom, Coda, TextMate. Dreamweaver supports it, but not great. Okay, I'll tell you right now. It also is available in NetBeans. Brackets is one of my favorite editors, so I like to use it there. And for sure, it's built into Visual Studio Code. That's what Emmet is. So there's something that gives us some shortcuts to produce HTML quickly when it comes to prototyping. All right. So when we write the shortcut, it looks like this. So if I go back to Visual Studio, and I want to create my structure for my page. So think about this as each element that I'm going to write is a node, right? And the DOM is made up of the document object model that we're going to access today is made up of a series of nodes, one within the other one, parent nodes and child nodes, okay? And when I look at the parent-child relationship here, what's the parent node, and just a review, of all the other nodes in an HTML document? HTML. So that's the first thing I write, HTML. Follow me here, right? So just type this in, HTML. If you're using Visual Studio Code, you'll be delighted at what it can do, right? I'm going to use the greater than sign, right? And the greater than sign says, think about that as a descendant, right? Or contains, read it as contains. So my HTML contains what? It contains a head, right? And then next to it, if I do next to, it's not, instead of greater than sign, it's plus next to, right? A body, right? That's what it does. If I just do that, so head, HTML greater than head plus body, and I press tab, the tab key, I get this, right? So it gives me a very quick way of putting all the closing braces and everything else. I don't have to do that all myself, which is a pain in the ass, right? Isn't that a big pain in the ass when you start to write HTML? It takes a long time.
Sorry, what was after the plus?
Sure, let me undo that. So let's do it again. So if I do it again, it's HTML greater than, right, head plus body, right? Head plus body. And if I press tab, plus means it's in the same level. They're siblings of each other. So head and body in this particular scenario are children, because of the greater than sign, right? Children of the HTML node. So HTML will be the root node, and the two child nodes inside in this particular example here is the head and body node. We have to be clear on this because when we do any kind of content injection by using JavaScript, we need to know how we access these elements. Okay. Well, this is cool, and if I press tab, it gives me this structure. Okay. I'm going to undo again and write it again from scratch so you see it one more time. But I can also do something like this: HTML, and in square brackets, try this out. Square brackets tell us I can access the attribute. What's the attribute that I want to access for HTML? Probably language, like lang is equal to English kind of thing. So you can do that. You can say lang is equal to English, right? You can do that. Oops. I just need one, not two. There we go. Lang is equal to English, right? I can do that. Now, I want to still use my greater than sign, so I can add that in. Now remember, I have my head and my body, but my head also has a title tag, right? That's inside of it, right? And I want to put in a title that says, kind of lesson 3 or lesson 4, part 1. I want to put that in there, right? Let's do that all at once on one single line, and I'll show you how to do that. For content, we use curly braces. For attributes, we use square brackets. So if you have an attribute that a source tag, as an example, would be an attribute. Any kind of other attribute that you want to kind of fill in on the element itself. So the element would have several attributes. Like, for example, if I'm doing a script, I'm using the script element, the script tag. The first script tag is going to have an attribute, which is source, src. I can do that here with square brackets, right? Curly braces are for content. So if I want to put the content of my h1 tag, I can use curly braces for my shortcut. Okay, let's try this out. So I'm going to do, again, the head. Inside the head, right, I have a title, right? Inside my title, it's going to say lesson 4, right? Part 1, or let's just call it lesson 4 for our purposes. How about that? And we'll maybe talk about the course. How about that? So COMP1073. So let's take this out. So that's the first thing, right? So title, right? Yeah, I'm going to go into the meta tags and everything else in a second. So that's one. So title is there, right? And now wait, I want to add my body tag. If I put the plus here and go body though, you get this. And check what you get when I do this. This is wrong, and I'll show you why it's wrong in a second. Press tab, you get this. Does the body belong inside of the head? No, right? And that's why I have this weird structure, right? Let's undo that. So the reason why it's happening is because I have one greater than symbol, right? I know you're smiling, you're saying, wow, that's can be cool, right? So there's my greater than symbol, but I include everything on top of that. I made the plus, and what it's assuming is that anything that's in this line after the head is a child, right? So to separate that, we use round brackets, right? Round brackets. So I go like this. I say, so in my head, I have two things. I have the title, right? So here's my. I want to kind of encompass my head. This is my head, right? So I'm using square brackets because this is underneath my HTML, right? Plus, in round brackets, I have my body, right, which is next to the head, right? And then inside my body tag, right, I have an H1 tag with some kind of thing like welcome to lesson. I'm going to keep typing, okay? Lesson 4. And next to my H1 tag, right, next to my H1 tag, I want to have a paragraph tag, right? Here's my paragraph tag. And inside my paragraph tag, you see where I'm going with this, right? It's crazy. I want to use some other tag which is called a lorem tag. So this is a special lorem tag that's just for Emmet. So if I say lorem, if I type lorem, and if I type 100, what I'm asking for is lorem ipsum text of 100 words. All right? And I'm going to go right to the edge, right to the end, and when I'm ready, I'm going to press tab, and I should get what I want, which is this. All right? Okay, so if you've never done this before, if you've never done Emmet before, you're going to say, wow, that's great, right? And it does save you a lot of time. I'm introducing it to you because I want to be able to rapidly template with you, and it should be something that you shouldn't be afraid of doing, right? Let's take a look if everything went as according to plan, right? So I have my title tag, right? I have my lorem ipsum of about 100. I can go up as high as 400, I think. If I want to put in some text, and inside a single paragraph tag, I can go as high as 400. But all my enclosing tags and everything, all the work that I would have to do to make this all go, like my closing tags, my opening tags, all that stuff is done for me, and we're using Emmet. Now again, you can attach Emmet as an extension to other popular editors. So if you don't like Visual Studio Code, or if you want to use Visual Studio, in Visual Studio you can get that, but you need to download something called Visual Studio Web Essentials. I'm going to just put it out there for you. If you go Visual Studio Web Essentials, it's a free download for Visual Studio, and it includes a version of Emmet called Zen Coding, which is identical to Emmet. It'll do all this stuff that I'm talking about here, and then some. Actually, it's even more powerful than what we're doing here. So it exists in Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio and other editors. What it pumps out is pure HTML, so you don't have to worry about this. Okay, and the great feature is, if I want to skip down here and then go, oh man, I forgot something, I can undo, right? If I undo enough times, I go back to my single line, right? And I can modify what I want in here if I forgot something, right? So great for code snippets. So let's talk about other stuff that I could have added in here that I missed. Like for example, I got my head tag and I got a title tag, but someone mentioned a meta tag, right? So let's see if I can put a meta tag in there for character set and all that stuff, right? Let's see if we can do that. Well, remember that my meta tag and my title tag are on the same level, right? So I'd have to do something like this. I'd have to, inside my brackets, I can use order of precedence, like again with brackets, just to surround my title tag. So here's my title tag, right? Because inside there, just make sure that it's correct. And by the way, if you mess up, it won't work properly. Like it'll fail. If you press tab, it just won't work. So, so inside my title tag now, if you notice, I can put in before my title tag or after my title tag another couple brackets. Here we go. And I can put in start putting my first meta tag in there. So I can say meta, square brackets, character set, right, is equal to UTF-8, which is one of the meta tags that I put in there. Then I can skip all the way to the end, right? I can skip all the way to the end. And then when I'm at the end, press tab. And if I've done everything correctly, then I've got my meta tag, which character set UTF-8, my title tag, my head, my body, my H1, my P, everything is there. So this is a pretty good way of making a quick template. We're missing a couple pieces here, right, that I'm going to put in. For example, I still think, and you can always add to it like this, I still like to put my meta tag in there for my name is equal to viewport, right, and content is equal to width equals to device width. I've memorized this, of course. Initial scale, initial dash scale is equal to 1. And that just basically tells my my browser that I want to reflow my content, and I want to change when my browser size changes, when my document size or my viewport size changes, I want to reflow my content. My width is going to be equal to the size of my browser or my viewport. That's what it's really saying here. And there's other options you can put in the viewport tag. Okay. So those are the two minimum tags I want in there. The one that we get from Get Bootstrap is the other one that supports IE nowadays, right? Which is the last one, right? So where do I get that? Remember I talked about Get Bootstrap as a good place for a template. So getbootstrap.com, and I want to scroll down and under the Getting Started section, if I click Getting Started, and if I scroll down here, you can see that there's a little snippet pack, a little snippet of basic template. One of the pieces that I want to put in there is this other meta tag that I can always fail to remember, right? Because it's with something to do with IE. You know, that weird browser that Microsoft uses? Yeah. Let's go back here and put that in between the UTF-8 and the viewport tag. Okay, cool. So we've got our basic structure. Remember, we downloaded and included. I want to help you build your assignment 1, right? Assignment 1, I asked you to build, you know, your Bootstrap. I want you to include Bootstrap, and I want you to include Font Awesome. So let's get those pieces in place right now, right? So how do I do that? So again, I could download Bootstrap. So I'm going to go back to up here where it says download, right, on Bootstrap. And Bootstrap is a CSS framework. Now you can use Bootstrap, and we'll talk about how to align our pages, and I'll do that today a little bit with Bootstrap, right? But you can also make your own CSS later on. So I'm asking you to download Bootstrap because we're going to continuously use this as we go forward, and it's a great way of doing a quick and dirty responsive layout for your website. Okay. Actually, it's a really cool layout. Okay, so I'm going to click on. There's different options. So source code, I can download this, right? If I want to set this up, I can also download stuff for Sass, right? If I was going to do for Sass only projects, but for now I'm just going to download the regular Bootstrap files, which are right here. Yeah. No, I'm just showing you just in case some people missed it or they forgot how to do it or whatever, right? So I'm putting it down there again, just in case. Right? Because I know I've gotten questions about this, and I just don't want to, you know. I'm going to put this on my desktop, right? So I'm going to put this Bootstrap 3.36. That's the distribution on the desktop. So I'm going to click Save. It's going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to unzip it. It happens automatically on the Mac. You can right-click and extract all for Windows. I don't need this piece anymore, so I get rid of that. And I have a couple of folders now. I have my Bootstrap folder, 3.36, and I have my, on the operating system side, and this is where I want to do all this stuff, I have it over here. I've got my two folders. One is my project folder, and the other is my Bootstrap folder. Notice that I have a fonts folder and a JavaScript folder in my Bootstrap folder, as well as a CSS. I need all these pieces, but I just don't have to put them all together. To make it simple, like I showed you last time, what I would do is take the CSS and the fonts folder and copy them or cut them, whatever you want to do it, and put them inside the content folder. That's where I'm going to hold all my CSS related stuff, right? So just take this and drag and drop. And on the Mac, it just actually moves everything, which is perfectly fine because I don't care about maintaining that distribution, right? Okay, the other one is the JavaScript. This piece is the only piece I want you to go in here. I don't want you to drag the JS in here. I could, but if I do the JS in here, I want to rename this folder from JS to lib for all my libraries. And put all my libraries in one folder, right? Now, on what I talked about on the assignment number 1, I never told you to do this, right? you can set up, but I'm showing you this is the proper way to do it to make Bootstrap work, right? So the minimum 2 folders you need are scripts and content. Underneath there, you can do a sub structure as you like, okay? For me, well, though, my recommendation is you take your JavaScript files and you drag them right into the scripts folder. And then just rename the JS file, right, into lib to indicate that it's a library folder, right? It's a folder of all my libraries, my JavaScript libraries. Okay, guess what? This folder here becomes really useless because it's empty, right, on the Mac. Now you might see, you might have copied and pasted on the Windows, but you don't need it anymore. You can get rid of it. So let's get rid of it. And before I connect Bootstrap to my site, let's grab everything from Font Awesome too. So we'll just do it all in one blow, right? So I'm going to go back to the website. And if I search for Font Awesome instead of Bootstrap, so Font Awesome, right? Now it's going to take me to the new Fort Awesome website, which is the new, the way they do stuff, right? But I'm going to click on download, this big button, this download button, right? On Font Awesome and click download. And it's going to ask me what I want to do, take your icon game to the next level, or just download Font Awesome. Guess what? I'm going to just download Font Awesome for our purposes on the bottom here. Click. Okay, cool. I'm going to put it on my desktop and press save. I'm going to extract it the same way, just like we did before. By the way, this is all review, nothing you haven't seen before. We're just going over it again, right? And when you go to Font Awesome, we can get rid of the zip file altogether. I can open this folder just like we did on the CSS side. Notice that I have a couple of things. I have CSS, Font Awesome, but I already have a CSS folder over here. So all I want to do is move these Font Awesome files into my existing CSS folder in my content folder. That's what I want to do, right? So grab these two files and then drag and drop them inside my CSS, my existing CSS folder. There we go, that's done. I also have a fonts folder for Font Awesome, and I want to take all this stuff and put it inside my fonts folder, which already exists in my content. That's the quick and dirty way to do that, right? So let's minimize this and take all my fonts here, right, like this, and just drag and drop into my fonts folder. Here we go. Cool. There's my fonts folder. I'm not going to touch less or Sass, right? So no SCSS or less, and leave everything else the same. In fact, my Font Awesome is done, and I can delete this now. Cool, so I've got my folder structure and all my required libraries ready to go. Notice that Font Awesome does not have a library of its own, right? In terms of JavaScript, it just is a CSS library, right? Cool. I need to attach all this stuff into my website, and now that I've got all this structure down, you should have a similar structure to mine. So it's fairly flat. Again, two kind of higher end folders, a content folder and a scripts folder on the root, followed by some embedded folders, a CSS folder in content, and a fonts folder that's in content. And I did this as a simplicity, to make it simple, so that way when your Bootstrap .css hunts for its own fonts, it just goes up one like normal and goes into the fonts folder. Otherwise, you have to do some custom CSS work, and that would be bad. That would take a lot of time that we don't have. Okay? Yeah.
May not be a bad idea just to be consistent. If anybody wants to run this on the Apache server, it's case sensitive. So I've suggested all the folder names are all lowercase and file names, because if you name it content with a capital C and you put that up on repost on an Apache server, you make that half of the lowercase C, it won't find it.
Right. The only reason why I made it uppercase and uppercase scripts rich is just in case someone wants to use Visual Studio in the future. And Visual Studio uses content uppercase and scripts uppercase. The only reason why I did it. Otherwise, I agree with you. Okay, so let's take a look at this from a structure perspective. Here's my my structure so far. You should have something very similar. So we're building up almost an example of your assignment number one right here. If you follow me here, you get a lot of the structure marks. I'm telling you what to do if you do what I'm telling you right today. So I'm setting you up to get top marks here for structure. In fact, if anything, right now we've gone halfway through. If I don't attach my Bootstrap and I just leave it like this and it's inside my folder, you're going to get 1 mark out of 2 for Bootstrap from a structure perspective, because you kind of downloaded it and have Bootstrap in place, but then it didn't attach it to your index.html. Make sense? Let's attach it to get the full marks. Go back to Visual Studio Code. Notice that my structure has changed, right, to reflect my operating system, right? So I have my CSS folders, and I have my fonts folder, and I have my lib folder. All that's there now, and I can finally structure everything the way I need to. So for all my CSS, I want to create a CSS section, and I'm going to use some comments here, HTML comments, to do that. So I'm going to say CSS section. And I usually like to do that to kind of indicate to the person who's reading my document to know what I'm putting in there. Now, it's pretty apparent what it is, but for you guys, I use this comment style throughout. Okay, so let's make our links to our CSS. And the fast way to do that is to type link, dash, or tab, I mean. And inside my href, this is my path to my section. What I want to start off with is, I want to start off with my Bootstrap, my main Bootstrap CSS. So I'm going to go, again, it's going to go content, and I got to watch it, like Rich said, content, capital C. It's important, right? And then / CSS / this is the path, right? Bootstrap.min.css. And that's my Bootstrap file, right? Now, I also want to include my theme for Bootstrap because I like to include themes because I can add in some additional colors and so on, right? So I'm going to kind of go in here and press paste again. And instead of just min, so it's bootstrap-theme, that's in here, right? So that's done. So those are the two files in there. Now that I got my Bootstrap, right, I want to include font awesome, right? And finally, my own custom CSS. My CSS should come always at the bottom because that's how that cascade works, right? My own custom style should be at the very bottom so that the last styles will take effect if I'm going to add in some custom styles. So I'll do another link, and this time I'll go into CSS, so content, CSS, and then it'll be font awesome, font-awesome, right? .min.css. There it is. Okay, but for my regular one, for my custom CSS styles, it's app.css is what I called it. So it'll be the same, link, and then it'll be, again, in the content folder, and it'll be app.css. There we go. So I've got all my CSS stuff done. In order for me to kick off Bootstrap, though, I need one reference to a JavaScript file other than my own, right, which is my Bootstrap. I also need, well, so there's one more thing I'm missing, actually. I almost forgot jQuery. Because Bootstrap won't work without it, right? And we got to get that too. So we're going to go out there and get it for a second before I forget it. I'm just going to save what I have right now and go back out to the web before I forget jQuery. Because if I don't have jQuery, Bootstrap no working. So jquery.com. Again, if you're someone who likes using Bower or something like that, if you know what I'm talking about, this is where Bower makes it so much easier as a dependency manager. Okay, so let's click on download jQuery. I don't care about being backwards compatible for my site right now. If I did, I would use jQuery 1.x, right? Because that's more compatible with some other sites that are out there right now. But if I'm making a brand new site, a greenfield kind of project, I'm going to use this jQuery 2.x, which is the latest version. Now, notice that it's broken up into several different files, right? So I can go download the compressed production jQuery. That's just the file. So if I click on this, it's going to ask me to download jQuery.2.2.min.js. This is cool. And I'm going to put that right into my desktop under COMP1073 Lesson 4 inside my scripts folder in my lib folder. So I'm just going to kind of tunnel right in there and put that jQuery version in. Then press save. I have to tell you that I probably want my map file as well because it's a good practice to download the map file for your JavaScript libraries. So download the map file as well, this other file here. Those are the two minimum files you need for jQuery. So download that. And also put this minimum map file, put that in with the lib folder inside your scripts folder and press save. Nowadays, most modern browsers want the map file for your JavaScript libraries. Okay? Okay, cool. Oof, finally, I've finished downloading all my libraries. I can start using them. And I need to include my jQuery.min.js file first before I start making Bootstrap work. Okay, I need that. So on the bottom here, I'm going to make some space in the bottom of my body tag here. And I'm going to make some comments, my HTML comments like we did before, like this. So I'll kind of talk about this as a JavaScript section. Here's my JavaScript section. And now I need to use, instead of a link, I need to use a script file, a script tag, script. Now, hey, we can still use Emmet. Even though I've used Emmet for the rest of the stuff, I can use the script tag and Emmet right here if I wanted to. Now, it's kind of silly because my script tag is almost like identical to if I typed it by hand, because I'm only filling in one attribute. But I could do it like this if I wanted to. Source is equal to And it's still the same path and everything else. So it's scripts, lib, and then I'm going to use jQuery. So it's going to be jQuery, right, -2.2.0.min.js. Okay, and if I go to the right and I press tab, it fills in that detail, right? So I need jQuery first. That's kind of the first library I need. It's just a library, an API. Let's talk about APIs in our documentation from last week. The way I access an API is I have to reference the JavaScript library. And then I have access to all of its classes and methods once I reference it like this, right? So first, I create a reference, a script, to kind of point to where my library is in my project, and then I can start using it, okay? Cool. And now the next piece is I need to attach Bootstrap. So it's going to be script. Well, I'll write it the other way this time, right? So source is equal to scripts, lib, and then it's going to be bootstrap.min.js. And min stands for minified, right? People are asking what min stands for because you may have not seen a lot of JavaScript libraries before. If I don't have a JavaScript library with a min attached to it, it means it's probably unminified, that I can go through the actual library and it looks like regular JavaScript. But minified scripts look messed up, eh? They look like this. If I was going to look at like bootstrap.min.js, it looks like this. It's all compressed and there's no, all the variable names have been changed to A's and B's and C's, right, to make it easy, like one single characters. And where they can, as an example, and it's all been compressed with no white spaces. Why do you think that they do that, these API developers? Why?
Every space is a bit of data.
Okay, so every space takes a bit of data. What about what you're saying?
Pretty much the same thing.
Pretty much, anyone else have a reason why? So that's so okay. So let's extrapolate on that. So it takes up a little bit of data, so that less bandwidth, which means it takes longer to load something that's expanded as opposed to compressed like this. If I compress or minify a library like this, my load time is speedier than if it's uncompressed. Actually, I'll tell you right now, it works the same with HTML and CSS, because you can compress your CSS, your HTML, and your JavaScript. It's not a problem. Okay. You can also compress your images, of course. So you have compression algorithms that compress things like ping images and GIF images and JPEGs and so on, right, to make it more effective. We don't care ever to look at this. I'm just showing you it so you understand why it's min. If you see the min, if I ask you on a test, what does the min stand for in your JavaScript API? It's minified, okay? And it's usually the production version that's minified, yes?
If we want to view this for us to actually read this verbally to unminify it,
You could, but there's also the unminified version up online. So if I go back on jQuery, and if I looked at the download the uncompressed development in jQuery, you can download it from here. That's the best way to do it. I wouldn't try and unminify it yourself.
there's no option.
No. Once it's minified, it becomes all A's and B's, so it doesn't really know what to do, right? To unminify itself. So you can grab both. A lot of times we grab both versions. And if you wanted to really look at jQuery and look at the code behind jQuery, I'll do it for you right here. I'll just download jQuery, the unminified version, and include it in my library. There it is. There's my jQuery unminified. Now if I go look at it again, so this is the minified version, right? This is the minified version of jQuery, and this is the unminified version of jQuery, where actually you can see, here's, hey, look at this. What's this? It's an iffy, right? Here it is right here. This is an immediately invoked function expression, right? Or a self-executing anonymous closure, right? Whatever you want to call it. And notice that all of jQuery, right, is structured that way. Okay? Cool. Let's go back to our code now. So I have my index.html. I attached jQuery and Bootstrap. I have one more thing to attach, which is my own custom script. Because if I don't have that, why are we here, right? And let's put that in. So script, and go into source, and we're going to point to scripts, and underneath that, my own name, because I don't have to go into a library folder. I just go app.js, right? There it is. So I've got my structure finally, right? I've got my structure, and this is the structure that I want you to create. This is full marks structure for your assignment number 1. If you do this, structure marks 8, because I've done everything. You've done everything I've asked you to do, right? I'm telling you right now, there's going to be people who don't hand me this. They're going to make some other structure, some other funky structure because they don't listen, right? please watch the videos if you're unsure and do what I'm asking you to do so you can get full marks, right? Okay, cool. So I've got my structure, and before we take a short break, because I want to take a short break in about another 5 minutes or so, I want to put in some basic stuff in here to test that my JavaScript and everything works. I got to test it, and I want to connect it to GitHub, and I want to auto-deploy it to Azure. So let's do all that before we break, all right? Because then we're all set up for my file again for the first time, okay? So 2 things to test it. One is, in my app.js, inside my IFI, right, my immediately invoked function expression, my self-executing anonymous closure, right? There's different ways of saying it. Inside here, inside this code structure, right? I need this syntax for it to work, right? I want to put in something that says a console log, right? That says app started, right? Kind of a test to see that we're getting there, right? Now notice that I didn't call an init function, like I said before. I didn't do any of that stuff. All I'm doing is calling this IFI. And if everything works well, and I've connected this properly to my index.html, this piece of code will execute automatically. So I'm actually creating a structure. For people who are traditional programmers, think about this as a main program, if you will, right? Or my driver, the driver for the rest of my code. So if you're a Java developer, this would be my driver block, right? That drives the rest of my code. Okay, cool. So let's test it first. So I'm going to go down here into, I'm just going to collapse these ones and go down here into the panel, into my file panel, right-click, and I'm going to kind of reveal in Finder or in Explorer, right? And when I do that, I can see it. Here's my COMP1073 lesson 4, and I want to just double-click on my index.html really quickly. Okay, there's my welcome to lesson 4, which has got no styling whatsoever. I mean, I've included Bootstrap, and I'm going to style it in a second. Right? But there's nothing there. Let's check to see. I'm going to right-click and go inspect. And let's take a look at the console to see what we got. Hey, app started. This is a good sign if you got app started. If you don't have app started, you missed something, right?
Oh, I have app started the failure on top of it.
Okay, we'll figure out that failure is. So you should have app started just like me, no failure. Everyone got that? Okay, cool. So we know that everything's working locally. Now I can push to do my first Git, I can initialize my Git repository, because this is like my first iteration of my template for my website, okay? And this is where I would initialize my Git folder. So again, I'm gonna kind of bring up Visual Studio Code here. I'm gonna go down into the panel, right-click to make it easy, and then open in Terminal or Command Prompt. It'll be on Windows. I'm gonna bring it up. Here's my Command Prompt or Terminal. And inside here, I want to do the first step to connecting to GitHub, git init, which is going to create my empty repository in a hidden folder inside my project structure. Then I'm going to do git add dot, which adds everything, all my files and folders, into my onto the staging area just before it adds, creates a snapshot of my files. Notice that even in Visual Studio Code, it picks up that I have 30 file changes, right? Which is cool. The next piece is git commit. This is my first commit, right? -m for message, and it's going to be initial commit or first commit. Cool. There's my commit. Notice that in Visual Studio Code, that little message goes away because now I have staged and I've committed 30-something files to my my local repository in that invisible folder called .git. That's where they're all going. Okay. Next, I need to connect it online. So I'm going to go up here. And I'm going to create a repository up online. So I'm going to go to GitHub. And on my GitHub, I'm going to go in there and go to Centennial College, right? Sorry, that again. Let's try Georgian College. Georgian College. And go in there and create a new repository, which is COMP1073. I'll be okay. COMP1073, and we'll call it Lesson 4, right? That's where the new repository name is going to be. And click on Create Repository. Cool. All right, so there's my repository container, but I haven't made a connection yet. And in order for me to do that, I'm going to right-click or select this line here. This is the easy way to do it. Copy it, which is this git remote add, which people fail to remember, right? Which is okay. Go back here to the code, right-click, and paste inside my terminal or command prompt, and press Enter, which actually creates that connection between your local repository and your remote repository. Okay? Now the last line, if you really want to be lazy, and I'll do it this way this time, is grab this piece, git push minus u origin master, copy it, and put that back in here as well, right? And press enter. And now what it does, it might ask you to log in, if you haven't done this already. If you log in with your credentials, it'll push my local files into my remote cloud repository and on GitHub. That's what it does. So now I've got my local files up to date and my remote repository up to date with its first commit, right? If all you did was this, right, and you didn't do any other commits, right, like if you've waited till the end of the project, you're only going to get 2 marks out of 4, right, automatically. If all you use this, if you do this to the last step, like you've done your entire site, it looks beautiful, and now you finally commit, you've lost 2 marks because I want you to work with Git, right? Every time you add a feature or make a change, you should add several commits as you continue to work because it keeps track of your work for you and make sure that you have some version control if you want to step back. Let's refresh to see that we have our Git files here. We do. And we also have our index.html file exposed on the root, which is important when we deploy to Azure, right? If we don't have this exposed on the root, we have to tell Microsoft where it is, right? And there's some other process to do that. Let's create our new site by going to the next tab. I'm going to go to portal.azure.com, right? And I'm going to click into my account, and you'll have a different account than me, of course. And when you click in here, I'm going to put in my password, right? And it's going to take me to my Azure portal, where I have a bunch of different little sites that I've kind of made for this course and other courses right here already. Okay, cool. I'm going to click on this plus button. You might also see it as new if you haven't clicked this piece here. This piece opens and closes your menu dynamically, right? I'm going to leave it closed because I know what it is. I'm going to go to plus, and I'm going to go to, and like again, this is all review, web and mobile. I'm going to go to web app, and I'm going to create a new web app that I'm going to make, and this is what you would have to do for your assignment. You'd call this assignment 1, right? But maybe something like COMP1073 dash assignment 1 dash maybe your name or something to make it unique. Because it's got to be a unique name across all Azure websites across the world, right? So I'm going to call mine COMP1073, and it'll be lesson 4. Hopefully no one's taken that. No one has. And if I click on create, then it's going to create a container space for my web app. Now remember, there's nothing there yet. And when it's done deploying my container, then I can make my connection to GitHub, right? I can't do a GitHub auto deploy unless I have a container already set up for me in Azure, right? So that's the next step when this is done. And when it's done, it'll actually take you to that page that says, hey, I'm ready to go, right? Like right now. I haven't done anything, and it's taking me automatically there. COMP1073, lesson 4.azurewebsites.net. That's my link, but I have nothing in there. So I've got to go scroll down on this side. Under settings, I'm going to scroll down until I get to publishing, and I'm going to go to continuous deployment. And this is where I would go choose my source, which is going to be GitHub. And then under GitHub, I'm going to choose my organization, which for us is Georgian College. And then from here, I'm going to go and choose my project, which I've just created called COMP1073 Lesson 4. Right? And then I'm going to leave it at the master branch and press OK. Once I've done that, and if everything goes successful, my full trip is done. I've done my my project template. I set it up with Get Bootstrap, the Bootstrap files, font awesome, my own custom files for both my JavaScript and my CSS. I've deployed it to GitHub, and I'm continuously deploying on Azure. So now this is the full gamut. So now you've got 4 marks for Azure just by doing this, right, for your cloud deployment. So far, 2 marks only for GitHub because I haven't done any other commits, right? 8 marks pretty much for all of my structure, my code structure. I've almost passed my assignment number 1, right? Like really, I'm kind of structuring it for you so you're ready to go, guys and girls, right? That's how easy it is. And part of what we do as developers is do all this other work other than JavaScript, right? We have to do this dance. So this is done, and just to test it to make sure that everything works, and this is what I'd ask you to do always when you auto deploy, is click on this link to make sure that it actually runs. So I'm going to kind of press Command or Control click, and then I should see this, which if you notice on the URL, it says COMP1073-lesson 4, azurewebsites.net. Check it out. It'll be available to you even in China, right? because it's all over the world, or so we think. Maybe in China, maybe not in China. Maybe China's a bad example, but definitely it might be available in most places across the world. Maybe 140 countries or whatever it's going to be, right? Questions before I stop this video and we take a short break. I've set up everything we need to get our stuff going, right? You've seen this before, but this is everything you need to start going your assignment number 1. All right, let's take a short break, 5 or 10 minutes. When we get back, we'll finish the rest.